Are you somebody who struggles with getting your child to transition from one thing, especially something that they really enjoy doing, to something that is maybe not so much enjoyable for them, or something that they just don't prefer to do? Well, in today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you some strategies that you can use in order to help your child transition between things that they prefer to do versus non-preferred activities. So before we jump into those strategies, I just want you to put yourself in their shoes and take a moment and have some empathy. So just imagine you are engaged in something that you really love to do. So let's say, for example, if you are somebody who really loves sports and you're in the middle of watching a football game and all of a sudden somebody comes in and turns the TV off, you would probably throw a fit, right? Or if you're somebody who loves to watch movies or romantic comedies and right at the peak of the next big action scene, somebody comes in and says, "Oh, stop, it's time to go and wash those dishes," you probably wouldn't really like that either, right? Or for me personally, my hardest transition is being on vacation and then having to come back to the real world. So just put yourself in their shoes and imagine if they are involved in something that they really, really love, and then all of a sudden you tell them to stop, or you immediately stop them from doing that thing. It's gonna cause some issues, right? The difference is most of us as adults, we know how to handle those transitions. But for children, especially those children who are on the autism spectrum, they may not truly understand what you're doing if you immediately just stop them from doing something that they are engaged in. And so one of the first tips that you can do in order to help your child transition is to prepare them ahead of time. So when it comes to preparing your child ahead of time, you can go about it in a multitude of ways. One way is you can use verbal communication. And so for some children, you may be able to say things like, "Okay, you have one more time and then we're gonna be all done with this." Or for some children who understand the concept of time, you could say, "Okay, we have 2 more minutes and then we are going to go to the store." But for some children who don't really understand what timing is, and for children who don't really have that good understanding of that type of verbal communication, you can also use visual supports. Visual supports are very helpful in helping children to transition from something preferred to non-preferred, because it gives them a visual expectation of what's to come. So if you have a schedule laid out, then you can show them exactly what comes first, then what comes next. You can use something such as a first then schedule, you can use a visual schedule, you can use a calendar, you can also use a visual timer. So preparing them ahead of time, using those visual supports is going to be key to helping them transition. The second thing that you can do in order to help your child transition from something preferred to non-preferred is start using some type of transitional tool. Now, a transitional tool is something that brings your child comfort that they can keep with them as they transition from one thing to the next, or they can carry with them throughout their day. So let's say, for example, your child really has a preferred stuffed animal. And let's say it's time for your child to stop playing their game so that they can go and have a snack, or it's time for lunch. What you can do is use their transitional tools, such as that stuffed animal, put the stuffed animal at the dinner table and say, "Oh, you're a stuffed animal. Let's call him Mr. Ears, just for the sake of this video. Mr. Ears is at the dinner table waiting for you. It's time to go sit with Mr. Ears." And so they are so comfortable and so fond of that specific stuffed animal that it makes it easier for them to transition to the next thing, because they look forward to engaging or holding or playing with Mr. Ears, or whatever the tool is. It doesn't have to be a stuffed animal. You can also use some type of sensory tool. You can use a sensory fidget. You can have a snack. Something that helps them feel comfort and ready to make that transition, so that it's not as hard for them to do so. The third tip that I would offer you that you can use in order to help your child transition from something preferred to non-preferred is to use some type of physical or environmental change. So I remember, and maybe you do too, but when I was in school, my teacher would sometimes just use hand gestures to get us to stop doing something or to get us to quiet down. So sometimes she would just come in and she wouldn't say a word, but she would do like this. and automatically we knew it was time to be quiet. Or sometimes she would come in and do some type of clapping pattern, like, and we would have to repeat after her and do the same thing. And once we repeated after her doing that same action, then we knew all eyes was on her and it was time to listen. So you can kind of carry over that same strategy and that same idea with your child and helping them transition. So you can come up with some type of gesture, some type of hand movement, some type of sound that when they see that or when they hear that, then they know it's time to stop what they're doing, pay attention to you, and move on to the next thing. You can also try to use environmental changes. So another thing that I remember that we used to use when I was in school was when it was time to move on to something else, sometimes the teacher would just flicker the light on and off a couple times, and we knew like, oh, this activity is all done, it's time to move on to something else. Definitely using some type of physical or environmental change can help trigger the child to knowing that it's time to move on to something new. The fourth thing that you can use in order to help your child transition from something preferred to non-preferred is using some type of sensory movement break or some type of sensory movement transition. So instead of saying, okay, we're going to stop your puzzle and go sit at the dinner table, you can say, all right, now it's time to hop like a frog to the kitchen. And so because their child may be more like excited about, oh, we get to hop like a frog, that may make it easier for them to move from doing a puzzle to moving to the dinner table. So you can use things such as animal walks or silly movements or dance moves to get from one thing to the next and see if that will help them make the transition a lot smoother for them. Another strategy that you can use is to offer them choices. So instead of just telling them, hey, it's time for dinner, you can say, okay, we are about to have dinner. Would you like to have a glass of milk or a glass of water? So that way they are getting a choice of some kind, which means they are still having some type of control over the situation, and it's letting them know like, hey, I'm not giving you the option to have dinner. I'm telling you we are about to have dinner, but I'm giving you a choice what you want to have with your dinner, right? So sometimes using choices offers children a sense of control, which they will still enjoy because it's like, okay, well, I still have control over something, even though what I'm transitioning to may not be my favorite thing. Same thing as if it was bath time and your child is not really fond of that. Instead of saying, oh, it's time to go take a bath, you can say, oh, well, we're going into the bathroom. What song would you like to play in the bathroom? Would you like to play your favorite Moana song or your favorite Baby Shark song? Whatever the case may be. So offer them choices and see if that will also help with that transitional piece. So in this video, we talked about 5 different strategies that will help your child transition from something preferred to non-preferred. We talked about preparing them ahead of time. We talked about using a transitional tool. We talked about using a sensory movement activity between the 2 activities. We talked about using choices, and we talked about using some type of physical or environmental change. Now, if after watching this video, you're like, well, you know, the problem with my specific child is they don't really even respond to me when I call their name, or they don't seem to respond to me. Like, why are they not responding to their name when I call them? Well, be sure to check out the video that I'm going to link, and in that video, I'm going to talk a little bit more about some reasons why your child may not be responding to their name. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.